look, what I aim to try and do today is just talk a little bit about what the managed services are, what the challenges are that organizations face when trying to stand up their own internal SOC. And I think that's quite pertinent to us, as it's a conversation starter for us to go and have with these organizations, generally in the sizes of kind of medium to enterprise. They're looking to build up their own internal SOCs, and it's our job obviously to bring them more towards an outsourced service. So I've kind of raised some various different points here that we can use and try and go to market with, but really that part is for us to just have a conversation about, rather than me trying to teach you what managed service is. Later on in the session, I'll talk a little bit more about what our solution is, what we provide, and how we implement it. Because I think that's, whilst I'm not going to go into the technical details of how it works, I think it's quite important that you understand what it is the service is there to deliver, how we deliver it, and what the timeframes are, because they're often something that we can achieve a much faster return on investment than what any other organization can. Before I do that, though, I was playing about with ChatGPT the other day, and you can now make pictures, which is fun. But what I wanted to do is do a little bit of a pop quiz, and we'll play some acronym bingo, because we all enjoy this. These are really simple, hopefully, and they'll progressively get a little bit harder. But I'm hoping that everybody knows what they are. So hopefully you can answer this one. Anybody give me an answer?
Sure,
please do. Thank you. Next one, SIEM. Very important in this conversation, obviously.
Oh no, see, management is again.
Right.
Yeah.
Who else? Kazu.
You know this. We
Come on, Kev. You got this, mate.
What's the S in? What yes. What's going to be the S?
No. I will pick on somebody else. Then Rob is going to tell us.
I've got no bloody idea at all.
Okay.
Systems.
So we've got.
So security information and event management. So that is essentially the backbone tool of what we use in the SOC to collate data, process it, and find security events. So it's a big factor in what we're going to be talking about throughout this session. So the next one, very much related to a SIEM, but a SOC.
Security operations.
Let's have a look.
Awareness and response. Security orchestration and automation response. So this is the application that does the doing automatically for us. So with the solution that we provide, Microsoft Sentinel, it has an inbuilt SOAR solution, which is a really powerful tool that we can utilize that can do anything from isolating a user by disabling the account, changing the password, taking a laptop offline, all sorts of different things. But it can also help us as a SOC to go out and enrich the data that we've identified. So we may, traditionally, we may get an IP address that we think is malicious. Generally, we would take that IP address, copy it, paste it into another platform, look in our threat intel. This can do all of that for us in the background and pull that data into the ticket, which we work from, and then that provides better information for us to go back to the customer with.
So is that taking action, or is that preparing the ticket so that the operator can take the action?
Both. So again, you can enrich the data, which helps us build the ticket. Yeah. It can do the doing, so it can isolate something, or it can go and do something else. But ultimately, it's just an automation tool. It'll
do whatever you want it to do, whatever you
pretty much. So the SOAR on the back of Sentinel, and we can go into the technical details of it later, but the SOAR on the back of Sentinel uses things like Power Apps and Power Automate to really generate different kind of actions that are carried out.
Okay. Because a SOC can fall apart at the seam, can't it?
Nice.
And that's me. Thanks, guys.
So EDR.
Frank, keep that one, really.
Endpoint detection. What?
Really?
What?
You're upsetting me.
Yeah.
Let's rip it off. You know this one.
So
Electronic disco rain.
That is exactly what it is.
So EDR, endpoint detection and response, and this is the next generation of antivirus. It's looking at more than just signatures of applications and files on a PC. It's looking at the way that a file has interacted or what that user has done on the endpoint, and it fires alerts to us as a SOC. So this is traditionally something like Microsoft Defender or Sophos, or, CrowdStrike, those types of solutions. Again, features heavily in what we do as a SOC, generates an awful lot of noise for us because it's normally and should be deployed out to every single endpoint within an organization's infrastructure, including servers, but generally at the forefront of a user sitting at a laptop, should have EDR on there. We're going to be monitoring the events from that, and it's going to fire into the scene. So again, we're taking the logs from these types of services and then sending them into the scene. XDR, and this is one that me and Frank spoke about this morning. Any ideas?
Extended detection.
Yeah. So extended detection and response
Me.
is a very different solution to a SIEM and a different solution to an EDR. It kind of sits in the middle of the two. If SIEM is at the top, next would be XDR, and then you have EDR. XDR would normally encompass an EDR solution as well as a cloud identity solution and other ingestion methods. What it doesn't do is collect the be all and end all of logs. So that's where a SIEM would be preference.
Sorry, just to clarify, because I remember looking this up when I first started. I didn't understand it. I couldn't understand the definition between the three, because it sounds like extended would almost be the one beyond MDR. But MDR, you're saying, sort of is the
So I think that's a bit of a marketing kind of term in or a marketing ploy to make sure that XDR is at the forefront of everybody's mind. In actual fact, XDR is probably pushed more at the small to maybe mid-size organizations. Yes, enterprise can use it, but it's more affordable in many senses because you're not having to pay for ingestion costs. It's kind of this is the price you're going to pay, that's it.
Right.
So it does become more feasible for the smaller size of organization.
So it's more straightforward for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
But as I say, it does have its limitations. It won't ingest specific use case data. So if we say, we've got a specific web application, we want to ingest that data, generally it's not going to do it. That's where we would need a SIEM, because that will pretty much ingest anything.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I guess also looking at the difference between EDR and XDR, because XDR does have EDR functions, XDR will employ a lot more automation across multiple layers of the organization's estate as well, whereas EDR will focus on that endpoint. XDR can focus on the wider environment. So there is a little bit of a difference, but I think that you're right. It's becoming more and more convoluted because people are pushing it in different ways. APT, this is more of a generalist kind of acronym. So advanced persistent threats, that's what we're looking for as a SOC. So we're looking for signs that these types of attackers are within infrastructure or attacking our infrastructure. So fairly simple one now. TTP. So similar to ATP in the sense that they're related.
Tactics, techniques, and procedures.
Correct. So this is how the attackers attacking or performing their actions. And generally, as a SOC, we will map the TTPs against something called a MITRE ATT&CK framework. The MITRE ATT&CK framework has various different references to explain how threat actors are working, what they're doing to try and infiltrate data or whatever it may be. So again, a very well-known acronym within speaking about managed services. I think this is the last one, but I think probably one of the hardest ones, but it is crucial to everything that's going on within the security industry at this point in time with AI and everything else? Anybody have a stab at what it is?
User and entity behavioral
Analytics. Yep.
But
So it is literally taking the abnormalities for us, using machine learning to understand, right, this is what this user normally does. They log in from the UK every day. However, for whatever reason, they've logged in from a data center in France today. So it will automatically understand that that's an abnormality, raise it to us as an incident, and then we'll investigate it and move on.
So does it like profile the user?
It can profile the user, it could profile the activities that the user
users or entities, a server, a file share, anything that could be described as an entity, a mobile phone. So a user is associated with their AD, right? So who you are, your identity that the computer believes is you, and then entities are.
What software does this?
Software does it, yeah.
So
You're looking for anomaly detection.
What's the name of the software?
the SIEM. So Microsoft Sentinel in our case would do that.
That's fundamentally the whole thing of what it's doing.
Yeah, exactly. So
Anomaly detection.
So as within a SIEM, generally we will program that to look for specific things, and they're called analytical rules. But it'll also try and learn in the background what users are doing, how they're doing. So the UEBA part. So thanks for that. Hopefully we're kind of prepared now for some of the acronyms that I'll be using throughout the rest of this. But obviously, if there are any questions, please do stop me, because I'm happy to answer them, happy to go into detail. But again, this is more a let's have a conversation between us all and also have input from everybody else. So looking at the challenges that business face when building their own internal SOC, or even not building their own internal SOC, just the challenges they face within protecting themselves and defense within cybersecurity. So from my point of view, and it's a common point, that a SOC is really about the people, process, and technology, and really, you know, I can't explain that in any other way. It is all about having the blend of a good tool set and the people to monitor it. I think that whenever I look back at any of the major incident responses that I've investigated, there's always been an initial point where some sort of tool has fired and said there is something abnormal here, but there's been nobody there to actually respond to that. And I think that's the biggest gap for many organizations. They employ the tools, they've got nobody there to actually respond to it or know what to do in that instance, and quite often they go brushed under the carpet and say, well, you know, I saw that there was a piece of spam, but I didn't do anything about it. So again, SOC really encompasses the whole methodology of people, process, technology. You know, we as a SOC, we're 24/7. We do look at the incidents that come through. It is our job to understand those and make sure that we categorize them as benign or not. So just to talk about some of the other factors that businesses are challenged with, obviously the recruitment and staffing. It's the same across every sector of security, right? Whether it be pen testing, GRC, SOC is again suffering from the lack of skills or the retention in their teams. It's very difficult to find a good analyst, for instance, that is going to work on a 24/7 shift for a long period of time. Generally, in our kind of ecosystem, a 24/7 SOC analyst, they are generally an entry-level SOC analyst. They don't want to sit at that stage. They want to progress their career. So there's always that churn of staff, which an internal SOC is also going to suffer with if they're trying to accomplish 24/7. But generally, an internal SOC, they're not going to consider that straight away. But it is very much a factor that they need to think about. Recruitment, again, for a SOC analyst, one thing that we actually struggle with to recruit SOC analysts, is if you speak to security staff that are wanting to come into the industry, a lot of them don't actually understand that there is this whole defensive sector of the business. Whenever you speak to somebody that's just left college or university, they're all talking about pen testing, they're all talking about red teaming. They don't factor in that actually incident response, SOC, that is another aspect of it altogether, and actually it's quite exciting. It's kind of demonized as this bit of a boring sat there looking at logs, but generally it's got quite a lot to gain from it, and those incidents keep people occupied, and it's not just kind of.
I would say that working in a SOC for 18 months, you probably get a better broad knowledge of security than sitting running than doing cyber essentials assessments for 18 months, running scans on network IPs.
But it's not something that you think about as somebody leaving college or whatever. It's everybody's thinking about watch Mr. Robot, I want to become a pen tester. Okay, but there's so much more to understand. But that is one challenge that organizations are facing, that they will either employ somebody that's really eager to get into the cybersecurity industry, but that individual, that really they want to be a pen tester, or that's what they're expecting out of the role, and either they'll learn to adapt and enjoy the role, or they'll leave. So again, a very difficult situation for organizations when building an internal SOC. Technology acquisition and integration, that is an interesting one. We'll talk about this more on the incoming slides, but the fact is, an internal SOC, generally, you're not getting that wide scope of what is out there on the market, what is good, what's bad. They're often having to go through things like POCs, which is a very limited window where they can trial these things. They're not getting the best use out of it during that period, and then they have to go and implement it. We, as a managed service provider, we have a vast knowledge of different platforms out there. We're constantly looking at what the developments are, and then we're looking to see where they fit in with organizations, and we provide that honest expert advice to turn around and say, actually, you don't want an MDR solution, you want an EDR solution, whatever it may be. But we have that industry knowledge, which is something that many organizations won't have initially. Okay, so continuous training and development, I think that's quite self-explanatory. Again, an organization will not often invest in people to go through various training. If you look at training courses from SANS or whoever else, that cost tens of thousands of pounds. It's not something an internal SOC is going to be too willing to invest in which case, refer you back to kind of recruitment and staffing. You're going to see a big churn of people if you're not continually training them, developing them, and bringing their careers forward. Scalability and flexibility, this is where our kind of main flag is here, that we should be waving at customers. If they're looking to build an internal SOC, it's going to be very difficult for them to scale. It's going to be difficult if they have to suddenly let people go because they've had a bad year, whatever it may be. We have the ability to spread various different resources across multiple contracts, which enables us to help scale our customers and keep an eye on resource levels. That way we can project what we're going to require in the future and plan ahead. That's not something that's too easy for an internal SOC. They don't really understand, especially if it's not a technology company, they don't understand how big the technology is going to grow in the future. Incident response and recovery, again, this is going back to what I mentioned earlier. Generally, if an internal SOC is internal and there is a major incident response, then they're going to lose all of these logs. So, that becomes very, very challenging for an internal SOC at that point. Threat intelligence and proactiveness, we as an MSSP, we have very intelligent people in lots of different areas of cybersecurity, which we're bringing all of our minds together to say, right, this is how we've attacked something, this is how we've identified it, this is how we've responded to it. That, again, isn't something that an internal SOC is going to have unless they perform an external, if they perform a red teaming event or a purple teaming event, whatever it may be. again, many challenges. I think the biggest challenge for an organization is the garbage in, garbage out theory. The amount of organizations that I've walked into where they've tried to spin up an internal SIEM and they're either paying far too much for ingestion or they're not getting the right information out of the SOC is horrendous. We've often gone into an opportunity where they said, well, I've got a SIEM, all you need to do is take on the alerts. We actually have to do an awful lot, even if a SIEM is implemented. We need to understand what the data sources are, what the use cases are, and whether we're passing that information into the SOC correctly. Because quite often you can send a load of logs to a SIEM, but it doesn't make any sense of them because they're not formatted correctly. They don't have the experience to do that. So again, they're not getting the best out of the solution. That's where we can really add a lot of value and make those changes according to our best practice, industry best practice, and other kind of threats that are happening to the industry. Then we move on to the use cases of that. So a typical use case within a SOC scenario is how does the organization use this application server, whatever it may be, and what logs are we seeing for that? We then look again to build a manual UEBA service where we'd create this analytical rule and say, well, this is what normal operations is. Right. It's a finance server, so everybody in this resource group should be accessing it. But if we suddenly see somebody outside of that group access it, then that's a problem.
So it's like business as usual in effect. You define what business as usual is, and then say if anything falls out of that's something wrong.
That's kind of one explanation as to what a security use case.
Okay, thanks.
So just looking at kind of again this from a high level, what is the real pain points and what is in-house versus outsourced. Now I've built this based on about 10,000 users. 1,000 users, not 10,000, and looked at what it would cost to hire a business hours team, roughly, including the tooling. We're looking at nearly £500,000, whereas we can provide that service at a fraction of that cost. So quite often, things like the return on investment is much sooner than what a in-house SOC can achieve. They're generally struggling to implement this years after acquiring the tool sets. We have a set plan which typically from where we need to be is deploying our services within 6 to 7 weeks. It's not something that's achievable for an in-house team. So lack of response, again, we've spoken about this heavily. I think that, again, just to reiterate it, I don't think I've done one instant response where there hasn't been something raised.
That had it been correctly investigated,
then they would have avoided all of this. Or not avoided, but they could have isolated it a lot sooner. Lack of resource, again, we've spoken about it. There is a stat there. How true it is, I'm not too sure, but it's what I found off of Google.
Yeah, all your other stuff. Whereas a red team is going to go, hey, guess what? These were the enablement activities. You need to fix all of that, not just detect bad stuff.
We may deploy a SOC and then we red team the organization and find, well, we can just skip all the elements we're putting detection on.
Yeah.
Because we've got this really old server that you're talking about. Or,
I think there's also, just to link it back to what we were talking about previously, there's a case where a red team can look at different security use cases and say, well, actually, yes, this is being monitored and we would detect things, but how do we improve that security use case and detection by attempting a different route? And that's always going to be something where if we're providing a SOC and a red team exercise, that's going to be valued. Okay, so next is just to talk about some of our services that we do provide, and I'm going to focus on the managed SOC SIEM, but we'll obviously incorporate the other aspects, and we're looking to build these out kind of over time.
Everybody know what vulnerability management is?
Yes.
Well, start the meeting. Does everybody know what vulnerability is in the context of this?
It's running like an internal scan, like we're literally giving it the list of vulnerabilities for them.
Things that can be exploited.
And remediate. Yes.
So it's looking for out-of-date patches and whatever else. So
it's the high level.
Yeah, anything that a pen test or
a threat actor could be like That's the way.
Well, anything that a pen test or Nessus would pick up.
Yeah.
Or no.
I didn't know that we offered an EDR service.
Technically, we do. We don't. We onboard customers' EDR solutions at the moment with the SOC. I'd really want us to extend what we're doing and build that out as a service on its own, because I think there are plenty of opportunities where people don't want a full-on SOC, but they want people to manage.
Was this like when I mentioned that Withers wanted someone just to kind of look at their CrowdStrike instances, with that kind of fall into that? They didn't want quite a full SOC, they want.
But hopefully we're providing the CrowdStrike or whatever it is, plus the managed service on
I
top.
think that'd be an ideal fit for something like First Light Fusion.
Unique use case, but another time.
Okay.
And then I thought we were further through the slides than what we are, but we'll quickly have a look at this. And this is, as I mentioned earlier, looking at the maturity levels between an MSP and an MSSP. Quite often, an MSP will state that they provide some sort of security service, even when it comes to things like
what's the extra S? Sorry, let's go back to the acronym bingo in MSSP.
Managed security service provider.
The security,
Right. Managed service provider, managed IT. So typically down here, you've got desktop support, i.e. we'll keep your Windows patched. When you need a broken when's a laptop broken, we'll get it working or send you a new
so
one.
it's just IT, outsource IT.
Outsource IT.
Right.
But
Okay.
A lot of outsourced IT will turn around and say,
we do security
provide
too.
security services.
Right, I see. Right, I thought that was two types of something to do with SOC, if you see, or.
And look down here,
it's a differentiator.
It's SMEs that usually want this MSP stuff down here.
Like Advent with thingy. What are they called? What are the company IT guys?
Qubit.
No, they're really nice. Anyway, yeah.
But also it's to indicate what we don't provide and what we're not looking to provide. You know, what we don't want to be dealing with too much.
Resetting
password. Yeah.
You know, that's not our bag.
Yeah.
You know, we can do it.
You wouldn't pay someone the amount of money you would do.
Specialism.
Yeah.
We're across all of our teams, I guess, looking to achieve all of the section in green. Whether this is in the right order or not, you know, that there's some arguments to be made that these could be reordered, but generally, looking at an organisation's maturity, this is kind of where we should be pointing them in the direction of, just to get them.
Is it the maturity levels? Is that based on a model, or is this just more for a slide to just indicate? Okay,
blue, not us.
Yeah.
Green, us.
And I think that's the main takeaway, right? I don't want us to be kind of sat here thinking, well, MFA is technically security. Do we deal with MFA? Not necessarily. You know, we're looking to provide other services such as the EDR, SIEM, and DevOps.
But if you do want that stuff, we'll either help you find tools or people that can do it.
So this slide, I just wanted to talk about how the managed SOC or the managed services team works with the digital forensics team, what the managed SOC looks like, how we operate and things like that. So generally within the managed services team, we've got two separate divisions: the engineering team or the supporting team. That's who's onboarding customers, developing rules and sorting out ingestion problems, all that kind of thing. And we've got the SOC team, which is generally the analysts. So the 24/7 team, the kind of more senior analysts that are looking into more complex issues and so on. So really just to give a high level overview of how the teams work, where they sit and what they do.
When it actually hits the fan, who tends to take a lead on that?
I think
is there a rule of thumb? Is it subjective?
I think
why?
The reason why I've put two on the both teams on here is because we work in partnership there. Yeah. When those types of incidents happen, especially if it is an existing customer of the SOC, we will be providing the incident response team with our findings. They'll be helping us by identifying what we won't cover. You know, there's all sorts of different collaboration going on in the background. Technically, I think if a IR retainer, which wasn't a SOC customer, had an incident, it would really depend on the nature of the attack. You know, if it was an insider threat, it's probably likely that we're going to want more of an imaging and forensics.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's a account compromise, then that's more on the SOC because that's what we do day in, day out. We're going to understand where those logs are. So it really
again, we're capable of covering all of it then.
Yeah.
So again, there's another string to your bow, isn't it?
we are limited, right?
Yeah.
You know, there isn't quite often, if it's a ransomware attack or something like that, the very first thing that people are going to do is encrypt the backups, encrypt the machine, delete the logs. They're all gone at that stage. So at that point, you know, unless we can decrypt it or take an image or something, we're very limited on the information that we get. But our job as incident responders at that stage is not to go in and have a look at exactly what that threat actor has done on that machine. It's more to identify what was the root cause, what was the breadth of the attack, so how far spread was it, was there anything stolen? And in those cases, we can find the logs via different.
That's like Scott Government, they just created an account for you, didn't they?